I'm not retired yet, my friend. No, no, they can say whatever they want, but it's not that easy. One fight, don't put in that position. You need to do a lot of things.
Canelo Alvarez thinks you're not a 54 pounder. In other words, you say, nah, he's too small.
That's his take. There's a reason why Israel was so respectful in the fight. Anytime I let my hands go, he would grab me or move.
Terence "Bud" Crawford is never one to shy away from expressing his thoughts, and his recent comments directed at Canelo Alvarez are a prime example of his no-nonsense attitude. Just recently, Crawford made a comment about just how much Canelo's name is declining in the sport, and he wasn't holding back his thoughts. The comment came in response to Crawford being placed on the undercard of Canelo's next fight. This isn't a distant issue either. It's unfolding in real time, and it speaks volumes about the changing landscape of boxing and the fire between these two.
We all know Canelo is great. We all know he's big. We all know he's strong. He got good timing. He got good punching power. He moves his head well. He's a good counter puncher. We all know all that things about Canelo, but we never seen Terence Crawford at 168. So we don't know. We don't know if Terence Crawford can take his punch power. We don't know if Canelo is going to be able to box, toe for toe with Terence.
The story goes like this. Crawford's rematch with Errol Spence Jr., one of the most highly anticipated fights in the welterweight division, may have been scheduled for the undercard of Canelo's upcoming bout. This decision was met with both confusion and outrage from fans. Why would one of the best fighters in the world, a man who just demolished Spence in their first meeting, be relegated to a secondary role? The answer lies in the numbers. Canelo, despite his legacy as one of the sport's most accomplished fighters, has been struggling with his recent pay-per-view numbers and ticket sales. His last few fights, especially against Gennady Golovkin and Dmitry Bivol, failed to live up to expectations, both in terms of drawing power and the excitement they generated. And now, to add insult to injury, Crawford's second fight with Spence is seen as the true headliner. But it's being buried beneath Canelo's shadow.
It could happen. Why not? If Crawford want to challenge himself to be great, let him try to be great. So I'm with it. So I'll be going for Bud. If he fight Canelo, I'll be going for him. I don't know if he's gonna win or lose, but I definitely be going for Crawford. I think if anybody can pull it off, he can pull it off.
Crawford, for his part, isn't one to sit quietly when it comes to such slights. His statement calling out Canelo wasn't just a personal attack, it was a reminder that the sport has changed. To him, it was Crawford, not Canelo, who dominated the welterweight division, decimating Spence in a fight that cemented his status as one of the greatest pound-for-pound fighters in the world.
Bud versus Canelo, based on last fight, is a 50-50. So Canelo fights an undisputed champ, up-and-coming former champion, and an up-and-coming undefeated contender. And somehow those three last opponents are somehow compared to Bud's Madrimov fight, making it a 50-50 fight? Wow.
And yet, he's been placed on the undercard, forced to share the spotlight with a fighter whose recent form has been under question. Crawford's brash comment about ticket sales being dead was a stark reflection of the fact that Canelo's name, while still huge in the boxing world, isn't the draw it once was. Fans are no longer flocking to his fights in the same numbers they did before, and that's become an undeniable reality. Crawford, being the competitive fighter he is, couldn't let this go without a response. This tension between the two men is about more than just a pay-per-view schedule. It's about their place in boxing history.
Don't you all want to see knockouts? I'm from a different time in this sport when fighters went to war in the ring. We wanted to destroy our opponents. I still took the Pacquiao fight knowing my body was broken and old and I couldn't beat him. But I was a warrior. I wanted to be a legend. It's a different mentality, a champion's mentality. Canelo wants to get paid. He avoids Benavides and Bivol, who schooled him just like Mayweather. He wants to cruise easily into retirement.
Canelo, who once appeared invincible, has been showing signs of vulnerability. The loss to Dmitry Bivol revealed cracks in his armor, and his decision to stay at super middleweight, rather than returning to light heavyweight for a rematch, raised more than a few questions. Canelo's reign, once viewed as impervious, has started to look more like a series of opportunistic moves, with the allure of his massive paydays overshadowing the actual quality of his performances. His struggles to make the big fights happen, particularly the one with Crawford that fans have long been clamoring for, or even Benavidez, has given more fuel to the fire. Crawford, on the other hand, has continued to dominate, with his knockout win over Spence further solidifying his claim as the best in the sport.
I feel I got the speed over Canelo. I got the reach over him. He might got the size, the power. I got the better skills, boxing skills.
Would it be more of a cat and mouse? The reality is Canelo does put people out. From Kirkland to Amir Khan to just...
Don't do
obviously,
I'm just saying, man.
No, but he's not Kovalev.
Kovalev was older. He
Billy Joe.
does. Don't get me wrong. He does have a lot of power, but all those guys that you name is not as skillful as me. I'm sorry. No disrespect.
But the heat doesn't end there. Recently, it was revealed by Turki Al-Sheikh, a powerful figure in the Saudi sports scene, that bigger fights could be on the horizon for both Crawford and Canelo. Al-Sheikh, known for his involvement in the development of combat sports in the Middle East, hinted that both men could be part of a major boxing event that would far surpass the scope of their current bout. This revelation adds another layer to the ongoing situation. Could Crawford's fight with Spence be just a stepping stone for bigger opportunities in Saudi Arabia? And could Canelo be playing the role of the aging champion, relying on younger stars like Crawford to keep the spotlight shining on him? This isn't just about Canelo's fading power, it's about the future of boxing and the changing dynamics in the sport. The rise of new stars like Crawford, who refuses to play by the traditional rules of promotion, is a sign that the old guard is being challenged. The heavyweight division is once again alive with action, but the same can be said for the smaller weight classes. Crawford, with his all-around skills and his willingness to fight the best, is carving out a path that could very well redefine what it means to be the top fighter in the world. His willingness to call out Canelo for his weak ticket sales only proves that he's not here to play second fiddle to anyone. He's here to take the throne, and he's not waiting for permission.
You want to fight Canelo? Would you ever entertain a fight with Benavidez?
Benavidez is a big dude. Not to say I won't fight him, but the only reason why I entertain Canelo is because he's not a big dude. He might be thick, you know what I mean, but he's not a big dude. Benavidez is like 6 foot something, come in 190, 200 probably, you know what I mean? I might as well go to heavyweight if I fight Benavidez.
Canelo, meanwhile, is facing the reality of his career. For years, he has been the undisputed king of boxing, the fighter everyone looked to as the face of the sport. But in 2023, that narrative started to crack. The doubts about his ability to still perform at the highest level are growing, and his reliance on other names to sell his events is only further proof of that. Crawford, by contrast, is at the peak of his powers. His win over Spence was a defining moment in boxing, a display of dominance that left little room for debate. And yet, he finds himself placed on the undercard of a man who, in his eyes, is no longer the top draw he once was. And this view is not just with Crawford. Even Benavidez believes Canelo is overhyped.
You gotta fight the best in the division. I'm number one in the division, number one contender. The second one is David Morrell. He's not fighting me, nor he's not fighting David Morrell. So it makes no sense. How is he gonna call himself the champion and have all these belts if he doesn't fight the number one or the number 2 guys? He's asking $200 million. Why, when they bring my name up with him?
Canelo Alvarez once again has the boxing world arguing in circles, but this time, it's not about a sanctioning body or scorecard. It's about whether he can survive or even thrive in the land of giants. Fresh footage has surfaced showing the Mexican superstar sparring with undefeated heavyweight contender Frank Sanchez, and it's already sending shockwaves through the sport. For those who followed Canelo's climb from 147 to 175 pounds, this shouldn't be a complete surprise. The man who began his legacy in the welterweight division has never respected limits.
Canelo, hell of a fighter, but my personal opinion, he's ducking Benavidez. You know, that's just my personal opinion, and I'm allowed to speak my mind. That's just what it is. He's going up. He's going up to cruiser, and I'm not knocking him, but he's going up to cruiserweight. And that same guy with that, he used to be at the Mayweather boxing gym. The guys really getting the best of him in the Mayweather boxing gym.
He stopped Sergey Kovalev at light heavyweight to win a world title, and at one point had plans to challenge cruiserweight Ilunga Makabu, a request the WBC shockingly approved in 2021. It seemed absurd at the time. It still does, but Canelo just doesn't care. And now with him moving around the ring against a 6'4", 220-pound heavyweight like Frank Sanchez, those absurd ideas are bubbling back to the surface.
Anytime Canelo faced an elite boxer, he arguably lost.
Hey,
Danny Jacobs?
arguably doesn't matter.
Danny Jacobs is not elite.
What?
Stop.
What?
Stop.
This dude is funny.
Stop.
He needs to Google the scorecards on the Triple G fight.
The footage isn't exactly violent. It's not like Sanchez was trying to flatten him, but even in the light sparring, Canelo's confidence and movement speak volumes. He's short, sure, and much smaller in mass, but he's not intimidated. And this isn't some gym myth either. His trainer, Eddie Reynoso, spoke plainly to ESPN. "I know what he has done with the heavyweights he spars with, and that is why we asked for the fight." The fight Reynoso is referring to may not be one he ever truly expected to get. The cruiserweight bout with Makabu was never finalized, and now that Makabu lost his title to Badu Jack, the same Jack who infamously punched 2 referees in separate fights, that whole route looks dead in the water. Still, it's not far-fetched anymore to imagine Canelo flirting with the idea of a heavyweight title shot down the road, even if just as a historical gimmick.
Generational fight, that will be talked about for years.
Yeah.
When I'm gone, they'll talk about, man, you remember Crawford coming up to 168 and fighting Canelo, 2 top 5 pound for pound fighters in the world in their prime fighting each other. Like, man, that's...
Yeah, but I also feel, Terence, that Canelo's just in a different place, man. I think he's...
Online, the response has been predictably chaotic. Some fans are genuinely thrilled by the idea of Canelo becoming the first man in history to win titles from welterweight to heavyweight. Others think it's a delusional fantasy cooked up to maintain his image after the bitter taste left by the Dimitri Bivol loss. One comment stood out in the storm. "This is what a typical Canelo fight looks like. Canelo is walking forward like a zombie while the other guy doesn't even try." Another user called the footage disrespectful to the sweet science, citing that Frank clearly wasn't trying to hurt him. But those criticisms ignore a crucial truth. Nobody spars a 220-pound killer unless they believe they belong. And this is why most pros don't like this fight.
I don't like the fight because Terence Crawford is a good fighter, but in the sport of boxing, it has divisions. What's that mean?
Right, weight classes.
Weight classes
for a reason.
Weight classes and Terence Crawford is a good fighter in super lightweight, welterweight, super welterweight, but I think more. I remember when Terence Crawford fought with Madrimov.
And this matters more now than ever, because the noise around Canelo isn't just about weight. It's about who really deserves to share the ring with him next. William Skull is reportedly next up on May 3rd. It's a stay busy fight. A meaningless one to most. But it sets the stage for something bigger. And here's where things get twisted. That something bigger might not be David Benavidez or David Morrell like purists hoped. It might be Terence "Bud" Crawford, which is something already controversial.
There's no Triple G on Bud's resume. There's no Trout on Bud's resume. There's no Daniel Jacobs on Bud's resume. Canelo is the one that's fought the elite level opposition. It's Canelo that fought Laura. There is no Laura on Bud's resume. There is no Laura on Bud's resume. Bud has never faced a multiple division champ. Bud has never faced a multiple division champ.
Yeah, but Bud is an elite boxer.
So you're an elite boxer, but you haven't fought elite.
Turki Alalshik, the Saudi power broker pulling strings and paying millions, is the man at the center of it all. Recently, he revealed that there could be even bigger fights for both Crawford and Canelo coming soon. That sent fans into a frenzy. If not each other, then who? But make no mistake, the Crawford versus Canelo fight is still very much on the table, and not everyone thinks it's a great idea. Trainer Abel Sanchez went on a full tirade about how this fight is nothing but a payday sideshow. He called it ridiculous, mocking Crawford's ambitions to jump from 154 to 168 without earning the shot. Canelo is the face of boxing, Sanchez said bluntly. This is going to be a sparring session. Canelo will punch holes in the aging Nebraska native.
They talk all the crazy stuff about me going up and having a tough time, but He went up in weight and lost. That's the difference. I went up weight and won. He went up and lost. You know, so let's not do that.
Sanchez didn't hold back. He called Crawford old, inactive, too small, and flat out unqualified for the fight. He mocked the idea of legacy, accusing Bud of chasing a bag rather than greatness. If it was really about legacy, he said, Bud would move up to 168 and fight David Benavidez, David Morrell, or Oslis Iglesias. Is it asking too much for Terence to suffer a little to get that mega payday? To be fair, there's precedent for this skepticism. Crawford's last outing against Israel Madrimov at 154 showed he may have limits after all. He didn't look like the monster who dismantled Errol Spence. He looked flat, slower, and unsure. Now imagine adding 14 more pounds of pure mass and standing in front of a granite-chinned, 168-pound assassin like Canelo, who's made a career off walking down guys who are naturally bigger. Abel Sanchez likened the Canelo versus Crawford matchup to Gennady Golovkin's 2016 clash with Kell Brook, another pound-for-pound fantasy fight that quickly turned grim. Brook came out looking slick. Fast hands, crisp counters, beautiful movement, but it didn't matter. Golovkin walked through it all, broke him down, and shattered his orbital bone in brutal fashion. It'll be competitive for a little while, Sanchez said, but the fight ends somewhere between the 9th and 12th round. He made it clear. Crawford's speed might give Canelo some early puzzles, but that's all it'll be, an early distraction. Sanchez also warned that Crawford can't rely on movement and survival tactics to sway the judges.
I think he can outbox Canelo. It depends on what kind of Canelo rocks up, and Canelo is very, very experienced. But at the same time, he's had a lot of fights, which means that, you know, there is a time that you do go downhill as well. So I don't know. It's an interesting fight.
We saw Arislandi Lara try that. The judges didn't fall for it. You want to beat Canelo, you better come fight in the trenches. Against a stronger, younger, and more explosive Alvarez, Sanchez believes Bud won't last unless he comes to war. Of course, some fans point to the Bivol loss as a crack in Canelo's aura. They say he's vulnerable, beatable when facing fighters with footwork and high volume. But Bivol was a true light heavyweight with height, reach, and the perfect game plan. Crawford might be more skilled in some ways, but he's also a much smaller man moving up 2 divisions with no meaningful fights in between.
Let me tell you what I think should be gone. The notion that Terence Bud Crawford should move up 3 weight classes, 21 pounds, to fight Canelo Alvarez. He's entirely too small. Jamel Charlo already proved that.
According to Sanchez, the only way Crawford wins is if Canelo grows to be 100 years old. What's more concerning for Crawford isn't just the weight, it's time. By the time the September 13th fight happens, Bud will be almost 38. He's coming off a year-long layoff and still doesn't have a legitimate win at 154, let alone 168. The timing favors Canelo in every way. Fans on both sides are debating, but there's a growing perception that this is a circus act. One fan compared it to junk food entertainment meant to sell tickets and pay-per-views without any lasting legacy. Behind the scenes, the drama doesn't stop. Some insiders believe Turkey is more interested in global headlines than legitimate competition. Why else would Crawford, who hasn't proved himself past welterweight, be leapfrogging Benavidez and Morrell for a shot at the undisputed 168-pound king?
Bud, Canelo, done deal. Looks like the fight is signed. What's your thoughts on this fight, man?
Man, it's a great fight for boxing. I know people don't agree with it, but if Canelo fights one inkling of the wrong fight, he's gonna lose. If he comes out and fights the right fight, it's gonna be a tough one. So right now, I think it go either way, but it depends on what type of fight Canelo fights.
The answer might be simple: money. Saudi Arabia is funding these fights to make a splash. Crawford versus Canelo isn't about rankings or resumes. It's about putting 2 recognizable names under the brightest lights. The irony is brutal. Canelo might be preparing for a welterweight turned junior middleweight who's now skipping 2 weight classes for a payday while sparring a heavyweight in camp. Crawford, on the other hand, hasn't earned the fight in the traditional way, but boxing today isn't built on tradition. It's built on names, clicks, and spectacle. Canelo versus Crawford will sell. It's already selling.
A smaller, bigger guy moving up in divisions. You know, being that these big guys are slower. So they might catch him with something, but he might see it at the last moment. You know, they might catch him with a hard shot, but he's able to roll and turn with it. You know, because he's coming from a smaller weight class that was faster, that was sharper. You know, I'm coming from a smaller weight class that's faster and sharper.
Still, there's a dark side to all of this. If Crawford loses badly, he could fade into retirement with a bloated check and a damaged legacy. If Canelo dominates him, the win will be criticized as another case of picking on a smaller man. And if by some miracle, Crawford wins, it could throw the sport into chaos. But few believe that'll happen. Most expect Canelo to do what Golovkin did to Brook, only worse. Canelo will perform much better against Crawford than Golovkin did against Brook, Sanchez insisted. He's better skilled, faster, and more experienced.
It happened in boxing, you know what I'm saying? And Terence Crawford is a legend. He's great. He's a great fighter. The only thing I see that I favor Canelo is that, you know, is his weight.
Yeah.
And that he's more bigger. You know what I'm saying? That's the only thing. But as far as skill set wise, IQ, I feel like Crawford can match anybody and probably do way better. You know what I'm saying? But you know, Crawford is a legend, bro.
Yeah.
You know, and like I said, you can't.
So here we are. Canelo Alvarez sparring heavyweights, preparing for a super fight against a much smaller man, while the real challengers, Benavidez, Morel, Pacheco, wait in the wings. The fans might be split, but one thing is clear. This version of boxing doesn't care about order. It cares about spectacle. And as long as Turkey's checks keep clearing, the circus will keep moving. Well, what do you think about the entire event? Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more updates.